The more she thought about it, the clearer it became. Emily's birthday wasn't just a date on the calendar. It had been a meticulously set trap. The killer hadn't acted on a sudden, violent impulse. No, he had carefully planned her murder to look like the tragic, inevitable consequence of her own secrets. And if Detective Laura Benson was right, the person responsible, the one who had orchestrated it all, had been the very same one crying the loudest for justice from the very beginning. Detective Benson arrived at the station long before the sun even thought about rising. Her mind was a constant loop, replaying the grainy surveillance footage of Daniel Carter's car. There it was, parked near his own home, just minutes before the frantic 911 call was made. That single, damning image shattered his alibi. It completely destroyed every assumption they had built the case on. For weeks, Daniel had masterfully positioned himself as the grieving husband, always cooperative, utterly devastated, and desperate for answers. But now, it seemed his entire performance had been carefully rehearsed, a script he knew by heart. Laura knew she couldn't rush this. Men like Daniel controlled, calculating, and arrogantly make obvious mistakes. He had planned Emily's murder with cold precision, and she needed to dismantle his story piece by painful piece, leaving him with nowhere to hide. The investigation into Daniel's background began quietly, a silent ripple beneath the surface of his seemingly normal suburban life. Detectives combed through his financial records, his call logs, and his work history, and under that polished veneer, they found deep, gaping cracks. He wasn't just in debt. He was drowning in it. Credit cards were maxed out, mortgage payments were long overdue, and most damning of all, there was a recent life insurance policy. He had increased it just 2 months before Emily's death. The payout, in the event of her passing, was a staggering $1.2 million. It was an amount large enough to completely erase his debts and let him start a brand new life somewhere else, free and clear. But that wasn't all. Laura also discovered something else, something he thought he'd hidden. Daniel had recently contacted a divorce attorney, though no official paperwork had been filed. He had told the lawyer he suspected his wife of infidelity and wanted to know how to protect his assets in the event of a split. It was crystal clear now. He had known about Emily's affair long before her murder. The narrative was finally taking shape. He hadn't just been a victim of betrayal. He had twisted it, weaponized it, and turned it into a golden opportunity. The next breakthrough came from the digital forensics team. They managed to recover deleted data from Daniel's phone, and what they found was a search history filled with disturbing, chilling patterns. In the weeks leading up to Emily's death, he had searched for topics like how to make a murder look like a robbery, and how long does DNA stay on a knife. But the most sinister discovery was his searches about Sophie Lane, her address, her social media accounts, even her favorite brand of perfume. The realization hit Laura like a physical blow. Daniel hadn't just framed his wife's lover. He had deliberately and cruelly chosen her best friend, Sophie, as the perfect scapegoat. Suddenly, everything fell into place. The entire twisted puzzle became clear. Daniel knew about Emily's affair with Eric. He also knew that Sophie, the loyal best friend, disapproved and had even confronted them about it. So, he used that existing tension, that friction between friends, to his advantage. He had taken a knife from Sophie's own kitchen days before the murder, when he had visited her under the simple pretense of discussing Emily's upcoming birthday party. He wiped it clean, carefully planted traces of her fingerprints, and then used it as the murder weapon. After Emily was dead, he meticulously staged the scene. He tore her dress, took her jewelry to simulate a robbery, and scattered subtle clues designed to point suspicion toward both Sophie and Eric. Then, with the stage set, he picked up the phone and dialed 911, slipping effortlessly into the role of the heartbroken, devastated husband. But even the most carefully laid plans begin to unravel with time. Daniel's arrogance, his belief that he was smarter than everyone else, had left small but crucial cracks in his perfect story. The soil on Emily's shoes, the bracelet he'd buried at the park, and that critical surveillance footage showing his car nearby when he claimed to be miles away. Laura was sure now, he was the mastermind behind it all. All that remained was to find the one piece of hard, undeniable evidence that would hold up in court. She decided it was time to confront him one last time. Daniel arrived at the station wearing the same familiar mask of sorrow he had worn since the very beginning. He spoke calmly, even offering his condolences to Sophie's family for the terrible misunderstanding, and then tried to steer the conversation back toward the possibility of Eric's guilt. Laura let him talk. She watched his every movement, every flicker of his eyes, every subtle shift in his posture. Then, she placed a single photograph on the table between them. It was the bracelet, the one found buried near the park. Daniel froze. His practiced calm vanished. Laura began to speak, her voice even and steady, as she methodically described every single step of his intricate plan. The missing jewelry, the fake robbery, the life insurance policy, the planted fingerprints, the staged evidence. She ended her narrative with the surveillance footage. "You weren't at the store that night," she said quietly. You were waiting, parked near your own house. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. The silence in the room was deafening. Then, slowly, the confident mask began to crack, then shatter. His breathing quickened, becoming shallow and ragged. Finally, he whispered, his voice barely audible. You can't prove it. But his eyes, filled with panic and defeat, gave him away. It was enough. A warrant was issued within hours. Police searched his car, and there, on the underside of the trunk lining, they found it. Traces of blood. DNA tests confirmed it belonged to Emily. The final, crucial piece of the puzzle had been hiding in plain sight all along. The husband who had claimed to love her, who had cried for justice, had been the one who ended her life. When the truth finally came out, the town of Maplewood was shaken to its very core. The man everyone had pitied, the grieving widower, became the villain they would never forget. Sophie and Eric were released, but their lives were left in ruins. Sophie moved away quietly, unable to bear the constant whispers and stares, while Eric resigned from his position at the hospital and disappeared from public life entirely. Daniel Carter's trial was swift. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of a man utterly consumed by his own pride and greed. He had discovered his wife's affair, pretended to forgive her, and then used her own birthday celebration as the perfect moment to exact his twisted revenge. His motive was a toxic cocktail of humiliation, money, and a desperate need for control. The jury took only a few hours to reach their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the one-year anniversary of Emily's death, her former co-workers placed a bouquet of white lilies at the hospital entrance, the same flowers she had arranged on the table just before she died. The house on Cedar Lane was sold soon after, its new owners completely unaware of the dark tragedy it had witnessed. But for the people of Maplewood, the memory of that night, and the betrayal it represented, never faded. Detective Laura Benson often thought of Emily Carter, the woman who spent her final hours surrounded by candles, laughter, and the beautiful, fragile illusion of love. What haunted her most wasn't just the brutality of the crime itself, but the cold, calculating precision behind it. Daniel had turned his wife's birthday, a day of celebration, into the stage for his perfect murder. Yet in the end, it was a stark reminder that no plan, no matter how flawless it seems, can hide the truth forever. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one. She thought she had all the pieces, but the truth was already hidden in the details. Every fingerprint, every camera frame, every tear-soaked lie was a breadcrumb leading her down a path darker than she could ever imagine. This wasn't just a murder. It was a story of love twisted into something unrecognizable, a betrayal buried under years of silence. And the person who knew the truth was already watching her every move. The investigation entered its second week, and tension gripped the entire town. Newspapers splashed Emily's smiling face across their front pages, with headlines screaming of secrets and suspicion. The police department was drowning in tips most useless, some bizarre, and a few worth chasing. But Detective Laura Benson was fixated on one thing, the text message Emily received right before she died. The tech team had pieced it together from her phone's deleted data. A text from a contact saved only as E. It read, "If you don't tell him, I will." The number belonged to Eric Nolan, a paramedic at Emily's hospital. He was recently divorced and, according to co-workers, often seen laughing with Emily. At first, it seemed innocent. But when detectives checked his records, the story fell apart. Eric claimed he was out of town the night of the murder, but his phone pinged less than 2 miles from Emily's home at the time of her death. Laura decided to pay him a visit. Eric opened the door, his hands trembling. His answers were too quick, too polished. He admitted knowing Emily but denied anything romantic. He claimed she was confiding in him about her marriage, saying her husband, Daniel, was distant and angry. When Laura brought up the text, he hesitated, then said he was just advising her to be honest. The lie was so thin, Laura could see right through it. A search warrant was issued 2 days later. Inside Eric's apartment, police found something chilling, a small velvet box. Inside was a gold necklace, identical to the one Emily's husband said she was wearing on her birthday, the one reported missing after her death. The back was engraved, "Forever E+E." Forensics confirmed it was Emily's. When confronted, Eric insisted it was a gift, a token of friendship. But the engraving screamed intimacy. Laura started piecing it all together. Emily was planning to confess her affair. The threatening text from Eric, his presence near her home, it all pointed to a crime of passion. It made perfect sense, except for one crucial detail. The fingerprints on the murder weapon didn't match Eric, Daniel, or anyone in the family. They belonged to a woman. And that woman was Sophie Lane, Emily's lifelong best friend. Sophie had been at the house earlier that day, helping decorate for the party. She even posted a picture of the balloons online, just hours before Emily died. When Laura learned this, the case took a sharp, unexpected turn. Sophie was brought in for questioning. She was calm, heartbroken, and cooperative. She insisted she left Emily's house long before the murder and had no idea how her fingerprints got on the knife. She admitted she thought Emily and Eric were too close and had warned her friend it would end badly. But when detectives pressed her about her finances, her composure cracked. They had discovered large, recent cash withdrawals from her bank account. Laura left the interview feeling unsettled. Sophie's calm felt unnatural. Either she was a masterful liar or she was completely innocent. Her home was searched, but nothing turned up. Meanwhile, social media exploded. Rumors swirled that Daniel had hired a killer, or that Sophie and Eric had conspired together. Laura stared at her evidence board. At the three people tangled in Emily's death: her husband, her secret lover, and her best friend. One of them had a reason to want her gone. Then, another clue surfaced. A neighbor's low-resolution doorbell camera showed a faint figure walking past the Carter house right before the murder. It looked like a woman in a light coat, carrying a bag. The timestamp was perfect. It was right when Daniel was away buying wine. When Laura compared the footage to photos of Sophie, the similarities were chilling. It wasn't enough to arrest her, but it made her the primary suspect. Still, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The clues were too neat, too perfectly arranged, as if someone had laid them out for the police to find. Someone was orchestrating this entire story, and Laura suspected the real killer was hiding in the chaos, smiling at how well their plan was working. Detective Laura Benson trusted her instincts, and her gut was screaming that this case was all wrong. On the surface, it seemed solved. The evidence pointed squarely at Sophie Lane, her fingerprints on the knife, her mysterious cash withdrawals, and the doorbell footage placing her near the house at the perfect time. But it was too clean. Crimes of passion are messy, chaotic. This was organized. Sophie was charged. The news sent shockwaves through the community. She maintained her innocence, her voice cracking with desperation. During questioning, she claimed she was home alone that night. No alibi. When asked about her meetings with Eric Nolan, her story wavered. She admitted to meeting him twice, but only to convince him to leave Emily alone. Then detectives showed her a traffic cam photo of her handing Eric an envelope. She claimed it was money Emily owed him, but the story was flimsy. Faced with this new evidence, Eric broke down. He confessed to the affair but swore he didn't kill Emily. Instead, he painted Sophie as an obsessed stalker who had discovered their secret and demanded money to keep quiet. He claimed she had threatened Emily and lost control when she realized he would never choose her. His confession was smooth, almost rehearsed. It was the final nail in Sophie's coffin for the DA. But for Laura, it felt like a performance. Late one night, Laura returned to the Carter home. The locked gate, the wiped knife, it all felt planned. Then, the final forensic report came in. Soil found on Emily's shoes wasn't from her backyard. It was from a trail near Maplewood Park, 2 miles away. A search of the area uncovered Emily's missing bracelet, buried in the dirt. It was wrapped in a tissue, and on that tissue, they found DNA. It belonged to Daniel Carter, Emily's husband. Daniel was unnervingly calm when confronted. He said he'd gone jogging there that morning. Laura didn't buy it. She pulled traffic camera footage, and it shattered everything. 30 minutes before his 911 call, Daniel's car was parked on a side street just blocks from his own home. He wasn't at the store. He was nearby, close enough to know exactly what was happening. Laura's pulse raced as the puzzle pieces shifted. What if Daniel wasn't the grieving husband? What if he had discovered the affair and orchestrated this entire charade? The framed lover, the planted evidence, it could all be his doing. That night, Laura stood in the Carter's cold, silent home, staring at a photo of the smiling couple. Behind that perfect image was a man who might have built an illusion of innocence, a man who had turned friends into suspects and love into the perfect motive for murder. Thanks for watching. This story is just getting started. If you want to find out what happens next and uncover the final truth, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the shocking conclusion. See you in the next one. What if the perfect birthday party wasn't for a celebration, but for a murder? Emily Carter was supposed to be blowing out 35 candles, surrounded by friends and the husband who adored her. But by morning, the only person standing over her was Detective Laura Benson, and the only thing her husband, Daniel, was creating was the perfect alibi. Emily Carter was the kind of person who made you feel safe. As a nurse at Maplewood General, her gentle voice and warm laugh were a source of comfort for both patients and colleagues. To the outside world, she was a symbol of pure goodness. To her husband, Daniel, she was his entire world. After 7 years of marriage, their life in the small suburban town seemed idyllic. It wasn't perfect, no marriage is, but from the outside, it was as close as you could get. On the morning of her 35th birthday, Emily was up early, excited for the day. She had the day off and was planning a dinner party Daniel had promised her. The sweet smell of vanilla and sugar filled their home as she baked her favorite lemon cake, humming along to the radio. Friends were due to arrive later that evening, and Daniel, before he left for work, kissed her forehead and whispered about a surprise. Emily just laughed, teasing him about his inability to keep a secret. She had no idea the surprise was darker than anything she could have imagined. As evening fell, the neighborhood was bathed in a warm, golden light. Neighbors saw Emily in her yard, stringing up fairy lights and arranging pink balloons. She even bought a bouquet of white lilies for herself. She was happy, or at least she appeared to be. She tried to push aside the nagging feeling of unease that had settled into her marriage over the past few weeks, blaming it on Daniel's stress from work. She didn't notice the dark-tinted window car parked just down the street, its engine humming, silently watching. Inside, the table was set for 6. Emily lit the candles, her face glowing in their soft light. The beautiful lemon cake sat in the center, her name scrolled in perfect white icing. Her phone buzzed with birthday wishes from friends and a call from her parents singing happy birthday. Everything felt right, until Daniel called. He'd forgotten the wine, he said. He was just stopping by the store. She laughed and told him to hurry home. It was the last time anyone would ever hear her voice. When Daniel arrived home half an hour later, the front door was unlocked. He called out her name, half expecting her to jump out and surprise him, but the only answer was a chilling silence. The house felt unnaturally still. The candles had burned halfway down, and the sweet scent of vanilla was now mixed with something else, something metallic that made his stomach clench. He called her name again, louder this time. That's when he saw it. The back door was slightly ajar, the curtains dancing in the evening breeze. Stepping into the backyard, Daniel's world shattered. There, on their perfectly manicured lawn, was Emily. Her light blue birthday dress was torn and stained with dirt and blood. Her hands were curled inward, her favorite gold necklace was gone, and her skin was ghostly pale in the dying light. A kitchen knife, slick with red, lay just inches from her body. For a long, frozen moment, Daniel just stood there, his mind refusing to process the horror. Then, a scream tore from his throat, a sound so raw it would haunt the quiet street for years to come. Within minutes, the peace of Cedar Lane was shattered by sirens. Flashing red and blue lights bounced off the windows of the silent houses as neighbors gathered, whispering in disbelief. This kind of thing didn't happen in Maplewood, a town where the biggest news was a lost cat. But tonight, their street was a crime scene. Detectives swarmed the property, securing the area and questioning a shell-shocked Daniel, who sat numbly on the curb. Forensics teams documented every detail: footprints in the soft earth, bloodstains on the grass. A single earring was discovered near the fence, and curiously, the back gate was locked from the inside. Just after midnight, Emily's body was taken away. The once festive home was now wrapped in yellow tape, the faint scent of birthday cake still hanging in the air. By morning, the tragic news had spread. Emily Carter, the beloved nurse, murdered on her birthday. The town was in shock. Who could have hated someone so kind? And why would they do it on the one day meant for celebration? Detective Laura Benson arrived as the sun was rising. Standing in the backyard, she felt this case was different. The scene was too neat, too staged. The unlocked front door, the locked back gate, the specifically chosen missing jewelry. It wasn't a random burglary gone wrong. This was planned. Someone wanted this exact outcome. As the first rays of sunlight hit the blood-soaked grass, Laura knew, with chilling certainty, Emily Carter's killer was much closer than anyone suspected. Detective Laura Benson started her day at the Carter house, coffee in hand. The birthday decorations were gone, replaced by evidence markers. The quiet was unsettling. Laura noticed the small things. No signs of forced entry. The front door was undamaged, but the back door had been left open, while the gate just beyond it was locked from the inside. The killer hadn't broken in. They'd been let in, or they already had a key. Daniel Carter sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, his voice a hoarse whisper. He recounted his story. He left for wine around 6:30, returned less than 40 minutes later, and found her. She didn't deserve this, he repeated, over and over. Laura had heard grieving husbands say those exact words many times. But sometimes, they were a shield. Forensics found partial footprints, a smudge on a counter, and dark hairs near the door. The murder weapon, a knife from the kitchen, had been wiped clean of prints. Laura was particularly interested in the missing jewelry. Emily's wedding ring was still on her finger, but a gold necklace and bracelet were gone. A thief who only takes a few items but leaves a phone and wallet. It didn't add up. One neighbor, Mrs. Halverson, recalled seeing a dark SUV parked across the street, engine running, just before the murder. Security cameras from a nearby store confirmed it, showing a dark SUV with covered plates circling the block before disappearing right around the time of the 911 call. It was a solid lead. At the hospital, Emily's colleagues were heartbroken. They all described her as a wonderful person. But one nurse mentioned that Emily had been distracted lately. Just a week before her death, she'd been seen crying, saying she needed to tell Daniel the truth. What truth? It hinted at cracks in their perfect marriage. Daniel's behavior was also raising red flags. His grief seemed almost performed. He cried easily, but composed himself just as quickly. When Laura asked about their marriage, he hesitated, admitting to arguments but brushing them off as nothing serious. He seemed particularly avoidant when she asked about Emily's phone. The autopsy revealed Emily was attacked from behind with a single, forceful stab wound. She had fought back. There were defensive wounds on her hands. The time of death was placed around 7:10 p.m., just 20 minutes before Daniel came home. The timeline was incredibly tight. The killer was either already inside, waiting, or arrived the second Daniel left. Later that evening, Laura found another clue in the report: the scent of cologne on Emily's dress. Daniel was allergic and didn't wear any. So, who was Emily with just before she died? Fear now gripped Maplewood. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was it a stranger, a secret lover? Detective Laura Benson didn't believe in random acts of violence, not ones as meticulously planned. The missing jewelry, the wiped knife, the precise timing it, was an execution. Looking at Emily's smiling photo on the evidence board, Laura made a silent vow. She would unravel the web of lies and find the monster who turned a birthday into a bloodbath. Thank you so much for watching. If you're as intrigued by this case as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next part of this investigation. See you in the next video.